Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And even though we got that big Nintendo Direct yesterday, we still have a lot of news to go over today, as it looks like Xbox and one of their premier new studios is actually partnering up with another big AAA studio. I actually find this one to be incredibly exciting, though there's been a little bit of a mixed reaction among the community, and I'm not really sure why, but we will get into all of that later on in the video. Now also, we've kind of seen a big comeback for Metroid this year with Metroid Dread, but is there possibly more in the works that could be releasing next year in 2022? Well, that might actually be the case, so make sure to stay tuned for all of that later in the video. To start this episode off, though, we're actually going to be talking about a Nintendo Switch game that was made available yesterday through the cloud. You know, Nintendo Direct was going on, so we didn't exactly get to talk about this one, but this one is actually The Forgotten City. Now, this is a game that I actually just very recently finished. You know, the thing is there's been a lot of really high-quality games that's released in the last couple months, and I've been juggling a lot of those back and forth, but out of all of those games, none surprised me more than The Forgotten City. This is just a great story-driven game with clever writing. It has an intriguing mystery to solve in an atmospheric world. Truthfully, I would highly recommend this game. Now, I don't necessarily recommend going out and watching a bunch of reviews of this game because I think it's probably best to go in blind when it comes to The Forgotten City. What I will say, though, is that it is very well received. It has an 85 overall score on Metacritic, and fans seem to just absolutely love this game. Definitely one of the most overlooked games that I've seen release in quite a while. But yes, this one is now available on the Nintendo Switch through the cloud, and this is actually something that we've been seeing Nintendo do a lot of here recently. I mean, they did that with Control, they did that with Hitman 3, Guardians of the Galaxy, that's getting a cloud version for the Switch, also Dying Light 2, that's getting a cloud version, and it must be successful enough for Nintendo to continue doing things like this. I actually think that this is a good workaround for Nintendo. Unfortunately, some of these games are just a little too technically demanding for the Nintendo Switch, and this is a nice workaround. It's not perfect because, of course, it will require a permanent, stable internet connection, but still a nice workaround nonetheless. Next up, let's talk about the latest news on the Epic Games versus Apple court case. Now, they've been having this dispute for a little while now, and, Fortnite got taken off Apple's store, and, they did reach a verdict here recently, though Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games, he wasn't exactly happy with that ruling, so he decided to go ahead and try to appeal the verdict. And okay, that's all fine and everything. You can absolutely do that, but at the same time, we've kind of seen how Apple deals with this type of stuff. There might be some repercussions, and, well, that's exactly what happened here with Fortnite once again. Yeah, if you take a look over here on Twitter, this is what Tim Sweeney had to say. Late last night, Apple informed Epic that Fortnite will be blacklisted from the Apple ecosystem until the exhaustion of all court appeals, which could be as long as a 5-year process. So yeah, that is quite a long time there, and Tim Sweeney he seems very surprised by this. He seems baffled, to be quite honest, and he's not happy. I don't blame him for not being happy, but at the same time, I don't necessarily feel sorry for him at the same time. I almost feel like this whole process has been ridiculous from the start because he signed an agreement with Apple. He broke that agreement. Apple fought back. Tim Sweeney got mad. They went to court. To be 100% clear, I don't necessarily agree with Apple either. There's a reason I don't have Apple devices myself. But when it comes down to Apple versus Epic, I don't think any of the events that's happened since Epic Games broke that policy has been all that surprising. And I almost feel like Tim Sweeney overplayed his hand here a bit. It almost seems like he thinks Fortnite is bigger than it is. Obviously, Fortnite is a very, very big game that has made Epic Games a lot of money. It's also made Apple a lot of money. But at the same time, Apple, as we've seen, can just kind of throw Fortnite out the window and be like, hey, we can make a lot more money elsewhere. I mean, you're talking about one of the biggest companies in the world, so it's really not that big of a deal for Apple to lose Fortnite. Yeah, I just don't think any of this is too surprising, and because of all this, it looks like, unfortunately, for anybody who does like playing Fortnite on Apple, it might be a long time before it ever comes back to Apple's devices, if ever at all. By this point, it seems like Apple's making an example out of Epic Games for breaking their policy. Next up, we have a big Xbox partnership to talk about that personally I think is very exciting, which I'll get into here in just a moment. But this is actually a partnership between the Initiative that's working on Perfect Dark and then Crystal Dynamics, which has worked on hit games such as the Tomb Raider reboot games. Those games are absolutely fantastic, which again, I'll get back to here in just a moment. But over on Twitter, the Initiative posted this. Perfect Dark update. We are partnering with Crystal Dynamics, the world-class team behind character-driven games such as Tomb Raider, to bring this first-person spy thriller to a new generation. The teams couldn't pass up a chance to work together. We're still in early development, but incredibly excited to use this unique opportunity to deliver on the vision for Perfect Dark. Now, when I first saw this post, I was like, wow, that's really cool because, I mean, the Initiative is this highly talented studio that Microsoft has put together in recent years, and they're working on the Perfect Dark IP, which I am incredibly excited about as I am a big Rare fan. But then you also have Crystal Dynamics, which has worked on some of my favorite story-driven games, being the Tomb Raider reboots. They did work on Tomb Raider 2013, and then they worked on Rise of the Tomb Raider as well. Now, contrary to what a lot of people believe, they are not the studio behind Shadow of the Tomb Raider. That one's actually done by Eidos Montreal, so don't get that one confused. But nonetheless, this is a very talented studio. They make absolutely gorgeous games, and they also have experience with rebooting a beloved character with Lara Croft. I mean, even the head of the Initiative, Daryl Gallagher, he came from Crystal Dynamics, so I just thought as soon as I saw this partnership, I was like, this is the perfect combination of here to bring Perfect Dark to life. I mean, that was just my first gut reaction, and then I started to read the community's comments about that, and sometimes the community can just kind of drive me crazy, especially when it comes to exclusive titles, because there's this negativity and concern that comes from specific crowds that typically weren't necessarily excited in the first place. It's that, quote-unquote concern, but, people are like, oh, well, this is strange and this, that, and the other. This is not strange at all. If you actually look into AAA development, a lot of these big AAA games have multiple studios working on said game. Outsourcing is pretty common, actually, when it comes to big AAA games. Take a look at God of War as an example. You have Valkyrie helping out with that game. Take a look at The Last of Us. There was like 2,000 people that worked on that game, all from several different studios. Look at Halo. That's another game that's outsourced a lot. I mean, just anytime you finish a AAA game, pay attention to the credits and realize that a lot of things get outsourced. Now, with that said, I do understand that Crystal Dynamics being the choice to help out with Perfect Dark, that one is really interesting just because the pedigree of this studio. This isn't your typical support studio, but rather this is a big, well-known AAA studio. But I don't look at that as a bad thing. I mean, if anything, I would say that that's a good thing because they are so talented. We know they make good games, and with them helping out on Perfect Dark, I mean, I can only see Perfect Dark being better for this. I mean, with all of that talent from the Initiative, this all-star team that they've been putting together, it's not a huge studio in terms of just sheer numbers, but they have a lot of talent there. And then you combine that with all of the talent over at Crystal Dynamics. Yeah, I thought that you want more talent on a game, not less, so I'm a little surprised at some of the reactions when it comes to this, and again, with all that talent, I think that they can put together a special experience when it comes to Perfect Dark. And that's something else about this. I think that there are some questions of what exactly is Crystal Dynamics doing, how many people are they dedicating to Perfect Dark, and how exactly are they helping out? So what we kind of know about Perfect Dark is that they've had it in a playable state for quite a while. Phil Spencer did visit the studio, I want to say it was about a year ago, and he was kind of teasing that he played their game. So we know that Perfect Dark is in a playable state. They already have a direction they want to take when it comes to Perfect Dark. They know how they want the gameplay to be. They know what type of story they want to tell. And now it's just about execution. And that execution right there is why I think that they're bringing on Crystal Dynamics. They want to make Perfect Dark as good as they possibly can. And with Crystal Dynamics being as talented as they are, and we've seen just how pretty of games that they can make, they can certainly help out bring Perfect Dark to life. They're not necessarily being brought in to change the direction of Perfect Dark or anything like that. Again, they seem to already have a direction they want to take, but Crystal Dynamics can certainly help make this game a reality. And that's something else to keep in mind. The Initiative, as talented as they are, they're not a huge studio, but it does sound like they have some big and ambitious plans for Perfect Dark, and by bringing in Crystal Dynamics, it will allow them to not only reach their lofty goals, but also to get it into customers' hands sooner rather than later. I mean, I imagine Daryl Gallagher probably has a specific time frame as to when they want to release Perfect Dark, and in order to actually release it in that time frame, he's probably looking at we might actually need some help to get this out the door. So that's where Crystal Dynamics comes in. And again, with just all of the talent that's now working on Perfect Dark, I really only view this as a good thing. Moving on, though, we do have yet another Nintendo rumor to talk about, and I mean, I guess it really didn't take long for these Nintendo rumors to continue even after that Nintendo Direct, and this one is actually for the Metroid Prime trilogy. Now, we've been hearing about the Metroid Prime trilogy for, it seems like a couple of years now. I mean, to be fair, when we heard about Metroid Dread, I talked about that on the channel probably about a year and a half ago. I mean, it was quite a while ago when we started hearing about that. There was some rumors that was circulating that there was a Metroid Fusion-like game in development. So we'd been talking about that one for a while now. So some of these rumors, it does seem like they take a little bit before, maybe Nintendo actually announces them. So I mean, I can't just rule them out, but nonetheless, the latest information on that Metroid Prime trilogy is actually coming from Emily Rogers. This is a well-known insider, and she had this to say. Last I heard, Nintendo was busy working on Metroid Prime 1 to celebrate the game's 20th anniversary in 2022. I'm not sure if we're getting a trilogy or just a re-release of the first game. I'm leaning towards the latter, but I hope we get the former. So if this is true, this is quite a shift on what was believed to be the Metroid Prime trilogy. According to her, it might actually only just be the first Metroid Prime game, which would be a little strange on Nintendo's part. I've just always felt with Metroid Prime trilogy releasing on the Switch, it'd be a perfect way to lead up to that Metroid Prime 4 launch, whenever that is. I mean, I know it's probably still a little ways before Metroid Prime 4 releases, but if Nintendo was able to pump out the Metroid Prime trilogy for the Switch, that would be a great way for them to reintroduce fans to a franchise that a lot of people view as one of the best franchises of all time. We've kind of talked about this before, but unfortunately when it comes to the Metroid franchise, as good as these games are, they haven't always exactly sold a ton of units. So unfortunately, a lot of people has kind of missed out on the original Metroid Prime trilogy, and I think by releasing them onto the Switch, I mean, not only would that be great for fans leading up to Metroid Prime, but it's something that I would think Nintendo would want to capitalize on. We've seen this time and time again, but there is that Switch effect. A lot of these games that are re-releasing on the Switch, they sell a lot more than the original release. And I think that that would be really big for not only fans, but really big for the Metroid franchise and Nintendo as well. So I just think it makes perfect sense to do this. But one thing that we see time and time again when it comes to Nintendo is they do have a way of surprising fans in not necessarily the way you would want to be surprised. So I kind of wonder if maybe they do decide to just re-release the first game instead, or maybe instead of that they could re-release Metroid Prime as a standalone game, and then later on they re-release Metroid Prime 2, and then after that they re-release Metroid Prime 3, all for $60 a piece. For some reason, I just feel like Nintendo would do something like that, though I hope they wouldn't. I can imagine the community would not exactly be too happy with that, but I guess we'll see what happens. One way or the other, I do want the original Metroid Prime trilogy on the Nintendo Switch though, so I do hope that those rumors amount to something, even though it seems like year after year these rumors pop up and nothing happens. So anytime you hear anything about the Metroid Prime trilogy, always just kind of take it with a grain of salt. On to our final topic of the week though, and one of the highlights to Nintendo's Direct was the expansion of Nintendo Switch Online to include Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis games. And this also includes the option of buying a Sega Genesis and Nintendo 64 controller, though oddly enough, Nintendo's actually selling two different versions of the Sega Genesis controller. So what's happening here is that in the West, you will have the option to get the 3-button Sega Genesis controller, which was the original controller that came with the Sega Genesis when it first released. However, over in Japan, they actually decided to sell the 6-button Sega Genesis controller instead. And some fans are a little upset about this because the Western audience does not have the option of getting this 6-button controller, even though this controller was never exclusive to Japan when a Sega Genesis was out. Now, Nintendo is saying that the reason that they decided to do the 3-button controller in the West is because this was by far the more widely used and well-known Sega Genesis controller in those specific regions. So that's their reason for it, but I mean, at the same time, yeah, a lot of fans do seem to be a little upset that they don't have the option of getting the 6-button controller. You know, at the very least, it would have been nice to have the option to get that 6-button version, which, you know, a lot of people do view as the better overall option, but you know, I guess it is what it is. You can try to import the 6-button version if you want over from Japan. Let's go ahead and take a look at the poll of the day, though, and this is something that I always enjoy doing after these events to see what you all really thought. So I asked you all, what letter grade would you give Nintendo Direct 9.23.21? And here you can see that, yes, most of you all seemingly really did like this event, with 13% giving it an A, 49% gave it a B, 24% gave it a C, 6% gave it a D, and then 8% gave it an F. So from what I'm seeing there, 62% of you gave it a B or an A. So, I mean, most of you all did really like this event, and I'm really on your all side with this. I thought this was a very well put together event. There was a ton of games that was announced here. Several exclusives was here. You had some surprises along the way, such as that Sega Genesis announcement and Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I'm really excited about that one. I think that just all around, I thought this was a very well put together event. So yeah, I'm on your all side here. I'd probably give this one a B+ myself. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.